The following is a presentation of the Six Arrows Radio Network.
On this episode, we are talking VHF, UHF field radios with David Goldenburg, W0DHG, co-host of the Ham Radio Now show, and continuing the build on the VHF, UHF Go Box. This is the Ham Radio 360 Field Radio Podcast. This show is brought to you by Chameleon Antenna. Versatile, dependable, stealth, and built to last. Thank you for clicking and tuning in. I'm your host, John Jacobs, W7DBO, Whiskey 7, Delta Bravo Oscar. If this is your first time, thank you for giving this show a listen. This show is dedicated to all things amateur radio outside of the shack. It's your gear outside, whether it's ultra lightweight backpacking, soda type activations, MCOM, Aries, or maybe it just might be recreational or mobile radio. We're going to cover this in this show. This is episode 3. Thank you for our continuing sponsorships and listeners of the show for your feedback and support. Please be sure to subscribe to this show in your favorite podcast player. We're also on Twitter, at Facebook, and the website hamradio360.com on the Field Radio tab. We also have a companion YouTube channel to support this podcast. So please tell your friends and share on social media about the podcast. On August 21st, the United States from coast to coast will experience a total solar eclipse. This is being dubbed as the largest human migration for a single event. Cities and municipalities in the zone of totality are anticipating an overload of resources, especially cellular communications. So this brings me to a question. If you're in the zone of totality with your county or city, is your Aries being activated? Is there other MCOM activations? Let me know. We will be doing a show on the solar eclipse coming up next month, and I would like to hear your stories and feedback. Our family plans on migrating from Utah either up to Idaho or Wyoming to get in the zone of totality. We'll be operating remote stations from there and joining in on the ARRL Solar Eclipse QSO party. ARRL is dubbing this the largest ionospheric experiment ever performed. They are going to be combining local logs along with WhisperNet, PSK Reporter, and Reverse Beacon Network to study the propagation as it changes through the solar eclipse. So even if you're not on the path of totality, you can still participate with the Solar Eclipse QSO party. For more information, there is a link to the article that was released in the latest QST magazine about the event and the QSO party. So enjoy the event, take lots of pictures, and please share with me your story as we build a Field Radio Podcast Solar Eclipse episode. Continuing this week on our VHF UHF Go Box build out, this is for my Kenwood TMD 710G radio that I plan to use for voice and digital communications. In the last episode, we laid out the parts, wire diagram, and rough fitted the items in the box, and you can see this on our companion YouTube channel. This week I worked on assembling the box. I have an MTM gearbox case that's extra deep. I did that because I wanted to be able to still utilize the top tray that sits in the top for miscellaneous cables, and I'm using a plano for the remote head box that'll sit up on the table. Of course, the first thing I did is go to my 3D printer. As I've said before, I use my 3D printer in ham radio projects more than I use my soldering iron these days. I set out to print all my panels for the remote head box and the radio box. I found that I could put a panel on each side of the radio box and then one across the bottom. These panels are larger than I normally do because I was including the signal link and an SWR meter in the panels, which take up a lot of room. In the remote head box, I obviously had the remote head to the radio, 2 speakers for A channel, B channel, some power accessories, and then an MFJ mic selector box so I could connect my handheld mic, my table mic, or my headset and control the speaker and headphone volumes from the remote head box. Now, after printing out the panels, I ended up printing more brackets to support certain items. The signal link and the SWR meter needed some extra support on the panel to support the weight of those items. Also, the MFJ mic selector box, I used the top of it to create a sliding bracket for the remote head for the radio. I also printed some additional brackets, a set for the by&nbsp LiFePo 4 12 amp hour battery that will go in the box, and then I found myself printing small items such as my MFJ clock bracket, card holders, and additional brackets and items to fit out the box. Once I had all my panels printed, of course, things don't lay out quite like you think, so you print a second set of panels and then a third set of panels. And finally, you get to the point where you have all your panels printed, and I took to assembling the item. Next, I took to the wiring harness, using the WAGO connectors that I reviewed last week in the podcast. And I also created a multi-purpose snake, so I had a singular snake of cables, audio and power, and Cat5, going from the radio box to the remote head box. Once I had all these items together and printed and built, I took to assembling the box. And once again, if you are setting out on an item like this, plan for ample room in the box. Leave plenty of room for cables, for bulky items. Even with planning for ample room in the box, I still found myself coming up against hard items, cables not fitting right, room in the box for various things. So always plan ahead when you're doing boxes to plan for ample room for your cables and for the backside of all your components that fit on your panels. And then lastly, always remember about the radio. The radio wants to breathe, and it needs air circulation. So either plan for some forced air fans or leave plenty of room for circulating air. One item that I always print in my radio boxes is a sliding bracket for the radio. So the radio does not use the traditional metal bracket that it ships with. I use 3D printed brackets that I make, and that way the radio can slide in and out. This is beneficial for working on the radio, but also, like I talked about, how the radio needs to breathe. If I'm doing a heavy duty cycle, the radio can slide on the rails and give the backside heatsink and fan some room to breathe. Then when done, it can slide back into the box for closing. As with any build project, this is a difficult item to describe on an audio podcast. So that's why we're always employing our YouTube channel to supplement this show. So I encourage you to go to the YouTube channel and look at the first 2 episodes in this build box, and then also look at this episode where I have plenty of pictures and descriptions of how I'm building this box. As always, I invite your feedback and your comments on the build project and what could be improved upon or what you found useful. In the next show, this will wrap up this build project, and I will demonstrate the final product and then give a field report of using this at a backcountry event support. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Chameleon Antenna is our sponsor of the Field Radio podcast. Chameleon Antenna are made with the finest material available, and for my birthday last month, my father and mother, my father Larry, WA7ZBO, got me a Chameleon Windham 40 dipole antenna. This is a 40 meter, 20 meter, 10 meter dipole that does not require a tuner on those bands, and I've been able to get out in the field with it twice so far, and I have been enjoying this dipole antenna. It's lightweight, and it is durable, and it's a great item to set up in the field. If you're not aware, the Windham is actually an offset dipole. It's longer on one side than the other. So in the coming episodes of the Field Radio podcast and on the YouTube channel, I'll be covering an in-depth review of this item and also giving some field reports. If you want information, you can find them out at chameleonantenna.com or on our show notes page. Our guest on this show is David Goldenburg, W0DHG. He is the co-host of the Ham Radio Now show. He's a Scoutmaster and local Aries coordinator. He contacted me about the show right after we launched and offered to come on the show and talk shop. We started talking about VHF, UHF radios in the field, but as all conversations go, it grew into other associated topics. I hope you enjoy. With us on this episode, we have David Goldberg, WODHG, Whiskey Zero Delta Hotel Golf. He is the co-host of Ham Radio Now with Gary Pierce, KN4AQ. David, welcome to our show.
Well, thank you for having me, John. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much for reaching out and offering to come on and share a little bit on our podcast. And today in this episode, we're talking about field radios and what works best and which ones are most durable for field operations. And so you have quite a bit of experience in with ARES and event support and scouting. So if you don't mind, we ask you, what is your preferred or go-to radio for mobile?
Yeah, so mobile, and we kind of have to separate it out, right? Because Boy Scouts, it's mostly handheld, although we do some mobile stuff along the way. ARES is much more, the mobile radios. I like, we do UHF, VHF. Every radio's got to be, for my preference, would be a dual band, right? So you can work either one of the repeaters we have here or switch over and run simplex. And, we know in emergencies we're going to rely on simplex the most. I'm not sure so much if, branding is so important. I try to stay away from some of the Chinese knockoffs. I know that they're starting to hit the market more and more. You're losing power and you're using reliability. And we've seen some tests out here where there's a lot of splatter. Most of my radios are Yaesu radios. I like those a lot. I got a couple in my truck and, several in my Go box. A Linko as well. I've got a 220 Linko, and that thing's really bulletproof. Yeah,
so we look at definitely dual band, just because a lot of times you're going to be needing to pick the band. And when we say dual band, it's 2 meter 440, but 220 is starting to find its way in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. You're starting to see more and more radios that are coming 220 and 2 meter. When I say dual band, I'm mostly thinking 70 centimeter and 2 meter. Those are the ones that I have. Those would be the ones I get. Although I think I have one handheld somewhere that's 220 and 2 meters that we use occasionally.
Yeah, and then a power capacity. So when you're out, of course, when you're more with your ARES work, are you always looking for, a minimum of 50 watts? Or do you ever find where you need to get some of those higher powered single bands?
In my personal Go box, where you can kind of see, we actually can't see because we're all audio sitting behind me here.
We'll put it in the show notes.
We do a video show, so yes. I forget. In my personal Go box, I do have an FT 2800. That's like a 65 watt 2 meter rig, and I do use that occasionally. A lot of the simplex stuff we do is on 2 meters. Interestingly enough, though, I always try to start on low power. A lot of the times when we operate these out in the field, we're going to run them on batteries, and I have batteries I can carry around in a backpack that are light. I got a by&nbsp 20 amp hour that'll keep me going for a couple of days, but I also have a sealed lead acid 100 amp hours. I have one that's 185 amp hours. It's not as portable, but if we have a longer deployment, it's there. It's got the power, but I'll still start out on as low as power as I can possibly operate and still get through, and then bump the power up as we go along.
So you'll run out of food before you run out of power.
Yeah. When I get up and go, if we get activated. Typically when I run out, it's going to be beef jerky and kind bars and water, and likely I'll run out of food before I run out of the power.
So do you protect, like you said, you have yours in a Go box? You typically get them in Go boxes to protect from the elements, or there's some radios that carry some mil spec that can take a little bit of weathering.
Most of the stuff that I have that's portable, if like I said, I got a couple in my truck, and that's the biggest Go box I have, as it were. The other ones that I would take out, I have Go boxers. There's 5 radios in that Go box right now, including CB and HF. I have a couple others that I'll throw in a briefcase or a portable box that we'll put on the table, but for me, it's better to have them all in a unit that is protected. It also makes it easier to plug everything in. It's not sliding around on the table, and it's always ready to go. If I'm going somewhere that needs to be really fast, like I said, I have a Yaesu that's a dual bander, and an antenna that's just in a little briefcase, and there's a battery in there too. I can take that. It's not built into it or anything, but it's quick and up and out, and that way I have the ability to take it out and leave that briefcase behind if it's not feasible to bring along, or I can throw it in a backpack if I got to carry it a long way.
Yeah. So I guess when we're kind of outlining maybe some ideas for people if they are in the market for a radio, they obviously we talked about this first, a dual band capability preferred.
Yep.
Higher output capability doesn't necessarily mean you need to do that. Possibly some protection if it's not a radio that's meant to be weathered, you need to get it in something that's weathered. What about ease of use? I mean, I guess that's more of a personal preference, like you said with Yaesu.
Yeah, this is the Ford, Chevy, Dodge argument, right? I've kind of standard on the Yaesu. I don't know why I did that, but I did. I'm very comfortable with these radios, and it's a really, really important point is you need to be able to work them in the field. You can't rely on always having a laptop to program. You got to be able to get on the front panel and put in a frequency or program in a repeater, on the fly. And that's one of the things we stress in the Aries organization all the time, whether it's your HT or your mobile rig, being able to work it anywhere and everywhere and practice on it is really key and important.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we talked about how the Chinese models kind of fail when you get into high duty cycle or listening. They just don't hear as well as what I've found. But yeah, ease of use of programming. I have plenty of Baofeng radios, and I don't dare program those without my laptop and my chirp program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a couple of those. They're in my bug out bags, and I take them out every 2 or 3 months just to let the batteries drain and recharge them up. And they're really good for that. The battery lives on those, for whatever reason, they work real well, and they don't really, at least the ones I got, don't bleed out power. But otherwise, I don't rely on those so much. And we've played around with some of the other Chinese knockoffs that are coming into the country now. You get through Amazon or other vendors, and they're okay. They'll do the job, but if I'm deploying with the Aries group, I tend to rely on, the big three or the big four. Folks have Yaesu and Kenwood and ICOM, and there's some Malenko here and there, and that's what I like to see, because for the most part, that those things will hold up for the duty cycle. They'll be reliable. The signal coming out of them are clean. Yeah. Which is one of the things we've seen with some of the Chinese knockoff stuff. It's a concern, right? Because in the Aries world, we've got an important mission, and we've got to get a message out, and you can't be struggling to get that message through.
Yeah, and they definitely. I mean, I don't want the hate mail coming already.
Yeah,
it's only my second episode, but I have plenty of. Chinese radios, and one Baofeng, saved me one day when I sunk an ATV. So they definitely have their place in my go bags and my go boxes. But when you're looking at your key go-to radio, I'm a Kenwood guy, and so I like the Kenwood D710 because of multiple capabilities. I also like my ICOM. I think it's a 75 watt. It's a single bander. And so I got my go-to reliable radios when I set up an event and do that. So what accessories do you find the most critical items when you go a deployment, say with Aries? What accessories have to come with that besides, of course, the battery and the antenna?
Yeah, you gotta have a battery. You gotta have your antenna. Headsets are really important. I kind of prefer the over one ear, but that kind of goes along with my style. I'll listen from one ear, the conversations around, and the other ear, what's going on the radio. Other folks prefer to have the two ears so they can really focus, especially in a deployment. There may be a lot of stuff going around. You don't want the radio squawking because you don't need everybody else to hear what's going on the radio. That's really, for us, and you want to be able to talk back to someone else and have it clear. And sometimes just using a microphone in the box will work, but a lot of time that's really critical. All the forms for Aries are important. Got my notebook with all the forms, pencil, and all that equipment. Those are really key. A good light is important. I got a headlamp that kind of lives in my go box all the time. That's really, really critical. You don't think about it during the day, but once it gets dark, you can't see anything. Your medication's always important for the areas, and most of our areas operators are not young people. And whatever medication you need to have along, that's important, as well as, a snack here and some water there.
So essentially what you're kind of recommending is kind of what I've always heard is, when you get deployed, don't become part of the issue.
Yep.
Become part of the solution.
Absolutely.
Don't go to them and say, "Hey, where's my water? Where's my food? I'm make a medication run for me now."
Yeah, in Los Angeles we have an understanding with the hospital system here, and that's who we work with, and other groups as well. And the understanding is, if we get deployed to the hospital long term, one of the understanding is they need to food us and water us, and maybe even give us a place where we can take a shower now and then, or catch some Z's. But when you first show up, you want to be prepared to be self-sufficient for up to 72 hours is really what we ask people to do.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good stretch for an operator. Yeah,
and we don't expect you to operate the whole time, but at least to be able to
be on scene.
Take care of yourself. Yeah, be on scene. I have tools in my truck that, if I get into that bad power situation, if I get deployed from work, and there is a disaster, I know in the hospital parking lot there's going to always be a lot of cars, and I know where I'm going to find my batteries. So I'll have power, and I have enough supplies that I can get through usually in my car for a day or a little bit more, and the stuff that I have here, ready to go to pick up and pull, then I could last longer than that, and like up to that 3-day period. And again, hopefully you get some help. Once you deploy, initially things get kind of hot and heavy, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and over time it will slow down, and so you get opportunities to have breaks, but you got to listen to the radio too.
Yeah. So this has been helpful to kind of hear some perspectives. It's good you're a Yaesu guy, because I'm a Kenwood guy, except when it comes to HF, then I'm ICOM guy. So it's good to hear of. So what other you talked about with your scouting with handhelds is that where you just let all the boys have the Chinese radio so they don't hurt your precious radio? What's your precious radio?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, so in scouting, it's a whole different world. We, I'm in a pretty good sized Boy Scout troop. I'm the Scoutmaster for. We do a lot of backpacking. About half of our trips every year is backpacks, and so weight is super critical and important. And I have the Woshan radios. And I like those, and I like those for a number of years. I don't see those as the cheap Chinese radios. I see those as the more quality ones. Yeah, I mean they're either kind of in between, but they've been reliable, and I typically carry those around. When I work with the scouts, like merit badges and stuff like that, I have some of those $12.99 Baofangs, and we give those to the boys to work through the stuff that they need to work through. But when we're on the trail backpacking, pretty much expect all of our adult leaders to have their own radio, and most of them end up getting the one that like I have, because it's $100, or when we bought them they were about $100. A little better quality, get an extended whip antenna on it, more than the rubber duck that comes with it, and a lapel mic, and you're invested about $150, but they're real reliable, and you get some good range. I've got a roll-up J-pole, N9 TAX. I like his roll-up J-poles.
Yeah, he does really good.
And yeah, they're solid. We're in the backcountry. Some spots where I could get into repeater, or I could get out on simplex, but if you're in a canyon somewhere and you got to hike up a hill because something goes wrong, and we've had to do that before. Getting that roll-up J-pole gets you, just a little further out, and enough power to be able to get a hold of somebody and request help if you need to. And again, it's not a. I know some guys that they'll carry around like a VX8, a Yaesu VX8, or some of the other waterproof radios. We don't do a lot of water activities, and if I break one, I break one, but they're good and reliable. And we use them a lot, and we use them all the time with scouting because, the trail you might spread out a mile or more depending on how big the oldest hikers are and how small the youngest ones are, and you got to kind of keep them together. And sometimes it's challenging. I like to put the younger guys in the back, or in the front, and the older guys don't like that so much. They want them to go faster, so spread them out a little bit with a couple adults. And I have a couple of scouts that have their license as well. And if you got a license, you can carry a radio. It's up to you. And I will provide some of the less expensive ones for them if they don't have them in the field or they're worried about messing up their good one. And it makes a big difference.
Yeah. That we'll put in the show notes that N9 Tax roll up J-pole. Mm-hmm. That's I've gone through, I think 4 or 5 through swap meets or buying online J-poles, and then I came across this and put it on the analyzer. And of course, he gives you a sheet showing you how he self-tuned that antenna, and that is just a rock solid performer, especially in the backcountry. I paired it with a Arbor's weight and Arbor's throw rope, so I'm able to, in fact, I have a video of that I'll put on the show notes too, able to throw the Arbor's weight up in the tree. Because if it's anybody that knows how to throw a rope in a tree, it's an Arbor. And that Arbor weight comes falling to the ground, and the N9 J-pole just flies to the top of that tree.
Just pulling up.
And you're on the air within seconds.
I have a slightly different approach. I have a golf ball on about 50 feet of paracord. Yeah. And if I got to get it up in the tree, I just give it to the scouts and ask which one they think can get up the highest.
Make it a challenge. But the thing is to not do is to tie your car keys and use your car keys as a weight.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a really good idea.
Yeah,
but I bet it's happened.
Not to me, but I've heard of it before. So, well, that's good to know. We're going to appreciate you coming on the show with us today, and we're definitely going to get you back and talk more about scouting and your ARES, and you have a wealth and world of information that we'd love to tap on this show.
Well, thank you so much for having me, John. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm hoping to be able to reciprocate, and we'll get you on ham radio now sometime.
Yeah, that's right. So thank you very much for that. So once again, we're just wrapping up here with David Goldberg, W0DHG, and he is the co-host of the Ham Radio Now show. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you again, David, and we look forward to having you on the show again to discuss some other topics of interest. Chameleon Antenna has just announced a new product. This is a stainless steel adapter for their CHA spike mount and the CHA jaw mount. And what this does is, if you've ever seen their spike mounts that's meant to stick in the ground for their radios, they have now manufactured a stainless steel adapter to go from their spike mount and their jaw mount to their F-loop and their P-loop antennas. This adapter takes the versatility of the F and P-loop antennas to a more field portable setup with the spike in the ground or the jaw mount. So before, where you would need to use your F and P loop antennas on, say, a camera tripod, now you can clamp them to picnic tables or use the spike mount to stick in the ground. I look forward to this item shipping and creating more versatility with the P loop and F loop antennas. There is a YouTube video demonstrating this new item in the show notes, or you can find information on their website at chameleonantenna.com. For our tips and tricks segment, I'll expand a little bit further on what David and I talked about how you get antenna lines in the tree. Now, this is whether this is just for your roll-up J-pole or this is for your HF lines. And there is other great items out there, a potato gun, wrist rocket, and as we joked, certainly not your car keys. But what I've mentioned is an Arbor's rope and Arbor's weight. Now, if there's anyone that knows anything about getting a rope in a tree, it would be an Arbor. The rope that Arbors use are extremely lightweight. It's used almost as a guideline to pull up heavier lines, and then a 12-ounce throwing weight. What I prefer is the Weaver leather throw weight and line kit. This comes with a 12-ounce weight and 150 feet of lightweight throwing line. I have paired this Arbor's rope and Arbor's weight with my roll-up J-pole antenna that we talked about with N9 Tax, and I also like using this with my Pac-Tenna mini antenna. This is a great compact way to get those lines up in the trees and then recover them when you're done. I will include a link in the show notes to where you can find this product on Amazon. As always, please submit your ideas of tips and tricks to present on the show. You can email me at John, that's John, at hamradio360.com, and include a description, photo, or even a video we can publish on the show. Now for the training item. This is an item you can use for your own nets or play this audio over the air. In the show notes includes a link to the text of this training item. I hope you enjoy. Hello, this is John, W7DBO, with this training item on preparing your equipment for deployment. The concept behind Go Bags or Go Kits is that you have a pre-stage, tested, and understood equipment and supplies ready to go at a moment's notice. Go Bags will contain your equipment and supplies needed to support your assigned task and personal comforts during an assignment. When you are called out, this is not the time to scramble looking for items. You will end up grabbing items not needed, missing obvious ones, and being delayed and unprepared. The purpose of Go equipment is for you as a radio operator to be able to perform your task and independently sustain yourself during a call-out. As a volunteer, you will want to be part of the solution and not become part of the problem. While volunteering, whether it is in an active disaster area or a race, you will not be an effective communicator if you are experiencing discomfort because your personal needs are not being met. The goal is not only to survive, but to be effective and comfortable. In the simplest terms, there are 4 goals that should guide you in your equipment preparation. 1. Get on the air. 2. Stay on the air. 3. Be an effective communicator. And 4. Have fun. If you keep these goals in mind when planning, you will be better prepared and effective to complete your assignment. The Go Bags and other equipment need to be durable, adaptable, and modular so you can respond appropriately for your assigned task. The key to success with Go Bags is to break them down into smaller, modular bags or boxes based on activity, duration, or capability. If you could know exactly what your assignment would always entail, you could build a bag or a box for this purpose. However, a key to being effective is being agile and adaptable. Your range of assignments could be operating at a base station such as a hospital or incident command center, or operating in an aid station or a shelter. Another possibility is a request to be in a vehicle, mobile, such as operating a relay station or a ride-along. Lastly, you could be assigned to be on foot, shadowing a leader or a search and rescue group. Because you do not know your possible assignment, you need your equipment to be adaptable and modular. Your length of assignment may be a few hours, or overnight, or an extended period. Your equipment preparation needs to reflect the adaptability of duration and assignment. You may or may not be supplied with long-term power or rations. You need to be prepared to stay on the air. Just as you prepare your equipment, you need to prepare yourself mentally. If you have a set of preconceived ideas about your roles or duties and then you get assigned otherwise, this can cause stress and anxiety in a possibly already stressful event. You need to practice with your equipment and understand its capabilities and limitations. Use your equipment in the field. Things are different when you are under a tree versus in your home. The more practice you have, the more confidence you will have when the time comes to be an emergency communications operator. And always be of the mindset that you are open and adaptable to new assignments. Getting started can seem very overwhelming, but the key to success is to address one small item at a time, identify a specific scenario, document your thoughts, and build a kit for that need. Realize that this kit is not going to be an all-encompassing to the scenario, and it will certainly not solve every issue. You may have parallel issues. For example, operating a post and providing for your own meals and shelter. A good idea is to compartmentalize the operating a post and addressing the other needs separately in a different bag. I find thinking in this modular design can simplify the process and keep you from being overwhelmed. Once you have all your equipment prepared, you will need to identify where to stage the equipment. As you plan this modular design, there is no harm in redundancy of equipment in different locations as appropriately and financially feasible. In conclusion, you want your equipment to be pre-staged, tested, and understood. Experience is invaluable, as you need to understand each item and be well versed in its capabilities. There is no better way than to test and validate your plan through exercising your equipment. Use your kits for events you volunteer for. You will quickly discover what works and what needs to be modified. Remember, get on the air, stay on the air, be effective, and have fun. This is John Jacobs, W7DBO, with this training item. This will do it for this episode. Thank you, David Goldenburg, W0DHG, for coming on the show and sharing your experiences and your talent. Thank you for user feedback via email, Facebook, and Twitter. And especially thank you for Chameleon Antenna for sponsoring this episode. Please check them out at chameleonantenna.com. As always, please send me your comments, feedback, and show ideas to John, John, at hamradio360.com. 73.